next guest, he's riding a wave of parental opposition to the new Common Core testing that became very controversial. Michael Beneventano is actually one of more than 20 Long Islanders elected to their school boards on this issue of delaying the new tougher Common Core tests. And welcome to the show, Mr. Beneventano.
Thank you.
Are you surprised at getting elected?
No, because, well, first let me just say that Common Core was one of the reasons why I ran. It wasn't the primary reason, but of course, school board members, current and prospective, should understand what exactly is going on in their schools. They should definitely have knowledge of it. And I think it was part of the reason that I was able to get elected, because speaking to parents and students, they don't feel that they're ready. The implementation hasn't been good, and a lot of students and parents are concerned that these standards are counterproductive.
You're still in college, right? How old are you?
I'm 20 years old. I just finished my sophomore year at St. John's.
So you're pretty young for this sort of thing. There aren't many college students running for the school board. What motivated you to do this?
Well, there was a precedent. There have been young students, and actually there was a high school student in Syosset that ran. So this wasn't a precedent by any stretch, but based on what I've observed, both as a student and as a resident going to board meetings, I thought that they lacked a student voice, and I thought they could benefit from it. And there were certain things that I noticed that if you had someone who was not far removed from the school district, they could definitely step in and provide that input.
Well, you say you're not far removed. Only a few years ago you were in high school, but they didn't have Common Core testing. I would assume you never had to deal with any of this.
No, and in fact, it just started, so fortunate for me, I wasn't part of it.
So on what basis did you come to oppose them, since you never went through this yourself?
Right. Well, a lot of it was based on more findings on the Common Core, and a lot of it came from speaking to the people who have to deal with these standards, which are the parents, the teachers, and the students. And I'm finding that the feedback is mostly negative. I think a lot of it is, while most people acknowledge that there should be standards, I think that it's really how it's going to be implemented, and do we have the resources to implement it? And the answer to both those questions are no, as we're seeing.
Well, you're a young person, very determined, going to college, hoping to have a good career. Now you're on the school board. We know you're interning as well. You know, I'm sure you're like anyone else wanting to go out there when you graduate and get a good paying job. And we know the statistics show us that we're in a worldwide competition now with people from all over the world. And one of the failures that employers point to all the time is that students come out of high school and even college not prepared to do the job. So do you find it unusual to be in the position to saying slow down on making the standards tougher when that tends to be an issue in the workplace?
Well, I think we all acknowledge that there should be standards. So the problem is a one-size-fits-all system, I don't think is the way to go. I think students in districts, locally, state, and federal, they're all operating on different levels. So I don't think that assuming one standard for all students is really the right way to go.
What can you do as a member of the school board to get that message across? Because this is being run by the state, right?
Right. Well, much of the Common Core implementation, the standards are out of control of the local districts. What we can do, though, is when we're setting our own curriculum, because we do have control over that, there are certain ways that we can keep the locally controlled aspect of it into the district.
Well, can you detail any of that for us? Let me explain it. What would you be able to do to try to slow it down, perhaps?
It's difficult to do that. What we can do, though, is when we're making decisions on curriculum, we can make sure that it's not with a Common Core mentality. So based on the courses that we approve and whatever courses that we have control over, they're going to be without that Common Core standard behind it.
Now, it's not just the state. You've got the federal government behind this. This is actually an initiative of the Obama administration that New York signed on to with the lure of $700 million. And every now and then we hear some hints out of the federal government that, hey, you know, New York, you've got to stick to the rules that we gave you, or that $700 million could be in jeopardy. I'm sure you wouldn't want to see that money go away, right?
No, and I do think that what you just mentioned is part of the problem and what a lot of people are upset about, because this was most people say this was a state-led initiative, when really most people see it as federal. This was race to the top funding that was provided to the states if they met the Common Core standards and they abided by them. And again, that is really the federal overreach, which is what many parents and students are upset about.
But what about the world test scores that show that we're lagging far behind? Even some undeveloped countries do better than us in some of these categories.
Right. I think we do need the standards. until there's an alternative, this is going to be the status quo. Unfortunately, there isn't one that we can revert to right now.
Well, so then you realize the politics of the situation that the state is pushing forward. What are you going to do? What do you think the state should do now with Common Core specifically?
Well, I believe there's 5 states that still haven't adopted it, and 45 have. I think one of them just recently dropped out. But I guess what they can do is they need to keep going and make sure that if this is going to go into effect, they make sure that we have the resources to implement it, because along with Common Core and the standards and the test, there are it controls many things within the district, the technology that goes with the instruction. So there are things that we need to do. We need to be able to provide resources.
Well, you'll be a fresh voice there, and we'll be watching it. Michael Beneventano just elected to the Hicksville School Board and soon be having his first meeting. Thanks for stopping in and talking with us today. And we'll be right back.